Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you ready, Sherry?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the September 17th, 2024 Lawrence City Commission meeting. And now Sherry will go into the rundown.
Good evening, everyone. Please silence your cell phones to minimize distractions during the meeting. When the mayor calls for public comment, please approach the podium to indicate you wish to speak. Virtual participants should use the raise hand function to indicate they wish to speak. When prompted, select Join as Panelist. There will be a brief delay as your role changes. Once your name is called, please unmute and turn on your camera to provide your comments. Please state your name and zip code before speaking. The city reserves the right to turn videos off or mute participants. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. The primary format for accessing or participating in this meeting is in person at City Hall. Virtual access to view or participate in the meeting cannot be guaranteed. The chat function will not be monitored. If you have any trouble, the meeting can be viewed on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Sherry. And go ahead and get us started off with item A, approve the agenda. The City Commission reserves the right to amend, supplement, or reorder the agenda during the meeting.
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approved 5-0. Second item, recognition, proclamation, and presentation. Proclaim September 17th through 23rd, 2024 as Constitution Week. And it looks like we have Diane Guthrie here to go. Would you want to say anything for this? Would you want to go ahead and speak to this proclamation? Okay.
Hello. My name is Diane Guthrie, and I'm a member of the Betty Washington chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Diane, can you pause for just a second? Excuse me, everybody. Can you go ahead and pause your conversations while Ms. Guthrie is speaking, just
Can't hear.
out of politeness? You can't hear?
They can't hear, I think is what you're saying.
Oh, you can't hear?
Yeah.
Okay. Could you
Yeah.
Okay.
You can,
Is that better?
raise it?
yeah, you can raise.
Oops.
I would like raise it.
You can press this button right here, it'll raise it, and that button will lower it. I'm gonna do the other one.
Thank you, Justin.
All right, can you hear me now?
Hello.
Good. Okay, this will be brief. My name is Diane Guthrie, a member of the Betty Washington chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. I am joined by my son, Devere Meyer, right there. The objectives of the DAR are to educate, preserve, and celebrate America. We are a nonprofit, non-political, and volunteer women's organization. Our chapter is named after the sister of George Washington. We meet the third Saturday of the month at 10 a.m. at the American Legion, and our meetings are open to the public, so everyone is invited. The only thing is you can't vote unless you're a member. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Whereas September 17th, 2023 marks, or I guess needs to be updated. September 17th, 2024 marks the 237th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it's fitting and proper and accord official recognition to this magnificent document and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate it. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America designating September 17th to 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Bart Littlejohn, Mayor of the City of Lawrence, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through 23rd, 2024 as Constitution Week. And with the Betty Washington chapter of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution in celebration of Constitution Week, urge all citizens to study the Constitution and reflect upon the privilege of being an American with all rights and responsibilities that the privilege involves. Thank you. All All right, moving us on to item C, the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and approved by one motion. Members of the governing body may remove items for separate discussion if desired. Members of the public may remove items identified as quasi-judicial for separate discussion if desired. Members of the public will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. Would any of the commission like to remove any items?
Mayor, I had a member of the public ask me when I walked in to pull item C1A for comments regarding the content of the city commission meeting agenda or the meeting minutes from last week.
Any additional ones? All right, with that, as there's no quasi-judicial, I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve the,
Just C1A.
Just C1A. Yep.
move to approve the consent agenda with the exception of C1A.
Second.
Have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. Passes 5-0. Vice Mayor Dever?
Mayor, when I walked in the door, I was asked by a member of the public why certain items weren't listed on the meeting minutes, so I would ask that person to speak to the items because I'm not really prepared to do so, but thought it deserved some sort of recognition since he requested such.
Okay.
The reason I asked Mr. Dever to pull this was because the meeting minutes are not reflective of what actually happened. It lists that the broadcast ends and that there's a 5-minute recess taken, and then it shows coming back to public comment. And what actually happened last week, and I would request that the minutes be corrected, what actually happened was that the live broadcast ended, Ms. Sellers left the room. I came up to the podium to speak and asked if it was public comment time. The mayor said, no, just a minute. I stepped back. The mayor spoke and then nodded to me and said, sir. And so I approached the podium and spoke for 12 and a half seconds until I said that the mayor wasn't a strong mayor and called him Mayor Little Man. At that point, the mayor decided that he would adjourn the meeting, or he actually first asked the police to have me leave and then took a recess while the police escorted me out of the building, issued me a citation for trespassing during public comment, and trespassed me from the rest of the meeting last week. So I'm just curious why the meeting minutes do not reflect the accurate chain of events that occurred there. And is this my natural suspicion of the city is this some way to hide the fact that you unconstitutionally silenced somebody during public comment? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Excuse me, sir. There will be public comment after I ask the commission if they have any further questions. So the public comment for this item hasn't started yet.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. I don't have anything else to add. Thanks.
Any further questions? Okay. With that, go ahead.
All right, I just wanted to second that and encourage you guys not to approve these minutes because they are not accurate. What it says here is that after the commission calendar, the live broadcast ends and that the commission took a 5-minute recess. That's not the order that it happened. You guys did take a recess, but it was after you had opened public comment. So under the open public comment there, it says the commission heard public comment on items and issues not scheduled on the agenda. And so that's not true. That's only halfway true. Like I said, you did the recess during that time. And also, those minutes don't reflect that you also did not hear comment from the public as well, because like Michael just said there, he wasn't allowed to speak, and then also I wasn't allowed to speak either. And I was simply standing up here talking about the lawsuit, the free speech lawsuit that I filed against you guys, and pointing out the inconsistencies that take place in the meetings here. And solid inconsistencies, like inconsistencies that you just can't deny. Like, I'm allowed to talk about some things sometimes, but not other meetings. Other people talk about the exact same topics as me, and then I'm not allowed to talk about them later. And Bart, you stopped me and then said that wasn't germane. And so, you know, I don't think it gets any more germane than that, where in the actual meetings taking place here, I'm pointing out your inconsistencies. So the city will try to say it needs to be germane to the business of the city. So talking about your meetings that are taking place right here over the course of time is without a doubt germane. And so anyways, Bart, you stopped me and said that it wasn't germane and that I was creating a disruption, and then you ordered the police to have me removed once again and then changed your mind at the last second again. And so that's not reflected in those meeting minutes at all. So it seemed like, like Michael said, there were some, it seems like you're trying to cover something up there by not accurately reflecting what's going on here. And, it's all on video. Luckily it's on video because you guys don't broadcast the meetings anymore. So serious issues that are taking place in here in terms of rights violations that are going on, you guys aren't broadcasting it to the public to see. And so it leaves it up to, right now it's just the Lawrence Times that's doing it, but they're only recording your guys' angle of things. So it's still only capturing what you guys want to present. So like Michael just said there, thank God he had his camera capturing the angle of what actually happened in the meeting, because it wouldn't have existed. It wouldn't have existed. It would just disappeared. Much like Amber, when she goes off to the back room, just disappears. It's like it didn't even happen. But we got cameras. So again, those meeting minutes aren't accurate. So I would just encourage you not to go ahead and approve those meetings. Thank you.
Okay. Any online? Sherry?
Stephen Watts.
Hi. Excuse me. Remind me not to click the join so quickly, because by so doing, you can't hear what the guy is saying in the few minutes. Going to the minutes, I appreciate that this has been brought up. I want to point out that we're back to the old style of not putting in what people are saying, as an example, in the city manager's report. This week, they did add public comment was taken. That's just not good enough. I mean, I would like to see them be able to capture succinctly what was being said. I am grossly confused as to what is the official copy of the minutes for the people and for the public and for the future. Is it the Zoom video? Is it the YouTube video? I don't know. I want to know, what leg are we standing on for these minutes to reflect actually what happened? And just so that you can also be informed, today at this meeting, you cannot view it via the video stream on the city's webpage. It doesn't work. It doesn't go to the meeting. It goes to September 19 Historic Resources Commission. So at any rate, can we please have real minutes? Thank you.
Okay, bringing it back to us. Any further discussion?
Mayor, can I move to approve the minutes with the addition of the public comment that we received today as input to the items that were not discussed previously?
I mean, I can bring them back for your approval, but I wouldn't want to
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that then,
make
please.
changes, but with direction
Yeah,
from the commission of what you would like included.
we can approve the minutes another time. That's fine.
But we've had this conversation before, so if you want me to do something different, it would be helpful if you all provided direction to
Yeah,
that.
I'm only one vote, so.
Yeah. Anybody else? Okay.
I'm not sure. Are you asking to do something with these particular minutes or minutes in general?
Well, these minutes will need to be amended. It doesn't reflect what happened. I think it's clear that there's no reflection of what occurred that time. I mean, does it mention that of what occurred that night? Do you see it?
It probably depends on, I haven't gone back to watch the video if
Yeah, I don't need
what
to.
occurred happened during the
I
recess
just,
or not.
if it's in question, I want to make sure it's right. That's all.
So I'm not necessarily hearing consensus on what it is that you're wanting, Vice Mayor. So is there something specifically, are you directing Sherry to go back and review the comments and questions from
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Spies and to then bring that back to us to
To
review?
approve this agenda, or excuse me, to approve the meeting minutes that reflect accurately what may have transpired that may have been omitted previously?
So based on the comments that reflect the issues and items that are not scheduled for discussion on the agenda that are germane to the business of the governing body.
Only because, Commissioner Sellers, we've itemized all the other comments that were on open public comment on this list, and I feel like to be consistent, maybe it's not consistent to be omitting previous comments. There's literally seven different separate comments that are listed individually here.
I get that, but you're wanting her to bring back the comments that are specific to the issues and items in the business germane to the body that Mr. Spee spoke of.
Yes, ma'am.
In just those comments.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So there were
But no-
comments provided prior to general public comment being
Correct.
introduced to the mayor.
And that's
And
what
I
you-
can review that, but those were not public comment because he had not
Right.
opened that section of the meeting yet.
Correct.
We also previously have had a conversation about including whether the removal of someone, because we do action minutes.
Sure, that's fine.
Is included.
It's up to y'all. I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
I'm happy to review them and bring them back.
No, that's fine. I'm easy. I just want to make sure we're consistent, and that if what occurred did not actually occur according to our minutes, then so be it.
I'm happy, I haven't looked at it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the video.
I don't know, and I just am trying to follow through with, what was brought up tonight.
We don't go in much detail with any item, though, really.
Sorry?
We don't go in much detail
Yeah.
with any item.
No, I mean, but Michael's comment is even acknowledged, and I guess it's because it occurred before public comment started, I guess? is what you're
Yes.
saying? Yeah. Okay, I guess I didn't understand that.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
did. That was before.
Yeah. Okay.
So is that a motion?
Well, if that's the case, then I'll leave it up to you, and I didn't understand that the comments were done prior to open public comment. My bad.
I would agree if it were during the open public
Yeah.
comment, that's different. But it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Are we,
We'll need a motion to approve because they're your minutes, or you all can just direct me to bring them back next week after review. We don't need a motion to do that. Just if you don't approve them, then I'll bring them back
I'm going to
next.
make a motion.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the 9/10/24 City Commission meeting minutes.
I would entertain a second.
Second.
Have a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Looks like item E, regular agenda items, conduct a public hearing to consider nominating 2415 Clinton Parkway to the Lawrence Register of Historic Places, L-23-00432 for First Presbyterian Church, nominated by Jeff Southard for the First Presbyterian Church, property owner of record, and adopt on first reading ordinance number 10064 to designate First Presbyterian Church located at 2415 Clinton Parkway as a landmark on the Lawrence Register of Historic Places. All right.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Commissioners. Lynn Braddock-Zollner, Historic Resources Administrator for the city, here this evening to discuss with you a landmark nomination for the First Presbyterian Church located at 2415 Clinton Parkway. This nomination was actually submitted to the Planning Department on December 13th, 2023, so it's been in process for a little while now. The structure what is located here, this is Clinton Parkway on the north with Crestline here to the west, and the area here that's highlighted in the blue color is the actual First Presbyterian Church property. The property is listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and it is also listed in the Register of Historic Kansas Places. This is the primary elevation of the structure. The Historic Resources Commission at their hearing determined that the structure didn't meet the criteria identified in Chapter 22 of the City Code for nominating the structure for its architecture. It was built in and I had that right here and just totally lost it, 67, and is significant, like I mentioned, for its architecture. Just to look quickly at a couple of the elevations of the building to refresh our memories. This is the main entrance into the structure. This is the elevation that faces Clinton Parkway. Part of the area, wanting to show you, they do have some amenities on the site, like a serenity garden for contemplation. There's also a playground. This is looking more at the western elevation of the structure. Here, if you can see where the cursor is, are the 12 apostle windows that are mentioned in the nomination, and there's a better view of those windows. This is the rear of the structure that faces south. And then going along that eastern elevation as you look back toward Clinton Parkway. The City Commission on June 4th held a public hearing to discuss the nomination of the structure and remanded the project back to the Historic Resources Commission to do some additional evaluation. Specifically, the City Commission asked the HRC to evaluate listing the structure only without the associated parcel, and to determine if the existing sheds located on the property affect the integrity of the property. This image shows the church here in the solid blue color with the 250-foot context area. That is what is typically done with a Lawrence Register nomination, to have the context area taken from the property boundaries if that is the way that the nomination was submitted. The Planning Office supplied some information to the Historic Resources Commission and have it here for you this evening to look at if only the building were listed in the Lawrence Register of Historic Places. That 250-foot context area would then be this blue area you see outside the white of the building. And the hatched area is that original 250-foot context area. And as you can see from this image, if that were to take place, it would remove the Housing Authority property from review for context area review. It would remove the university property to the north from that review. It would not remove any review for properties, new construction in this area, located in the blue area for the proposed development to the west, and it would not remove the apartments to the south. You have some information in your packet for a possible remedy to the situation for context review if you were to designate only the entrance to the historic building, then the 250-foot buffer would only be around and would only include, mainly, the majority of it would be that property that is associated with the First Presbyterian Church. These are the sheds that exist on the property that you asked the Historic Resources Commission to evaluate to determine if they had an impact on the integrity of the historic structure. After consideration and a public hearing, the HRC determined that listing the structure without the parcel is not consistent with the National Register nomination or the original application submitted by the applicant, but yes, listing the structure only would still meet the criteria for designation as outlined in Chapter 22. They also found that the existing sheds located on the property did not affect the integrity of the property. Just a couple of things. Hopefully you had a chance to look at the Historic Resources Commission meeting that they held, and there was quite a bit of discussion. And just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about a certificate of approval in the context area. The things that get reviewed in a context area are exterior construction or alteration visible from the public right-of-way that require a building permit from the city. Any demolition requiring a demolition or building permit from the city. Sign permits, development activity or entitlement, including site plan improvements and subdivision of land, and any ground disturbing projects. And ground disturbing projects are identified by the State Historic Preservation Office and the regulations that they have associated with state law review. Is a ground disturbing project means a project that changes the existing grade, shape, or contour of a property, or involves drilling into or excavation of earth from a piece of property where there is potential to disturb archaeological remains. The other thing that would require certificate of approval is for any improvements or development in the public right-of-way. This evening, you're charged with reviewing the nomination de novo, so we would ask that as soon as my presentation is over, you would give a report on any ex parte communications that you may have had for this presentation this evening, as this is quasi-judicial. According to Chapter 22, you do listen to this de novo, and by a majority of the vote of the members voting, the governing body may approve the recommendation, may disapprove the recommendation, or remand the matter back to the Historic Resources Commission. Just wanted to, I know there was some interest in a 50-year rule that we use for historic properties, and trust me, now that I'm past that 50-year rule, it does get harder to look at things being historic. But wanted to point out in Plan 2040 in Community Resources under Historic Preservation, Goal 1 is to identify, evaluate, designate, and preserve our community's historic resources. 1.9 under that goal, it says to evaluate all structures over 50 years old for their historic significance and educate owners on the ways such structures could be protected as historic assets. Also, Goal 2 in that same section of Plan 2040 says to conserve and protect the visual context of historic resources. While landmark structures and buildings are important in their own right, the area and context in which they sit also provides critical historical backing to fully illustrate their significance to the community. 2.4 under that same section denotes that that the plan is to support property owners who want to list eligible properties to the local, state, and or National Register of Historic Places. So with that information and the recommendation from the Historic Resources Commission, staff is recommending that the City Commission adopt ordinance number 10064 to designate the First Presbyterian Church located at 2415 Clinton Parkway as a landmark on the Lawrence Register of Historic Places. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions you might have.
All right. Any questions for Len?
No, sir.
I just wanted to make sure this landmark itself is already on the National and State Historic Registry, correct?
That is correct, and it is listed, and that's one of the discussions that the Historic Resources Commission had. It is listed as the parcel.
Okay. Just the parcel is.
The parcel with, the building is listed, but the boundaries include the parcel of the property.
And that is the extent of the coverage that it goes, is just to the boundary of the property. Is that correct?
Or the National Register and the State Register.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. Thank you, Lynn. And with that, I'll open it up to public comment.
Should we do ex parte?
I'm sorry, ex parte. Thank you, Commissioner Finkeldye. Any ex parte we would need to disclose?
Just, I had no discussions except for the emails that we received.
Mayor, I don't have anything to disclose.
I have no discussions other than the emails I've received as well, so nothing to disclose.
I've had no conversations. Again, I did receive emails regarding it, but I did not answer any of them.
And same as the other commissioners I've received. I had no previous conversations, only the 2 emails that were shared with the commissioners.
Okay. All right. With that, I'll open it up for public comment. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Southard, appearing in support of placing the property of First Presbyterian Church on the Lawrence Register of Historic Places. There's been a lot of misinformation presented on this issue, and in the limited time I have, I'd like to present some facts for your consideration. First, it is a fact that FPC's property has been recognized as historic by the state of Kansas, the Department of the Interior, the Lawrence City staff, and the city's Historic Resources Commission. I say property because that's what the application was for, not just the building. There's a reason for that. Because the property is long and narrow, the building is too. Because the property slopes slightly down from south to north, in order to stay on one level, the building has 2 small flights of stairs. The Commission has no basis to separate one from the other. Second, it is a fact that other churches in Lawrence have been given historic designation. Not one has been denied on the basis of objections from adjoining landowners. If you do that to FPC, it'll be the first time a designation has been vetoed for that reason. Also, in every previous case, notice was given to owners within 250 feet of the property line, not the building, giving effect to the plain language of the ordinance. Third, it is not true that historic designation stops all development in the area. Such fears are irrational and unjustified. The city staff and the HRC address such issues all the time. In fact, they had 3 at their July meeting. All were approved. In this case, it may well be the staff looks at the existing apartments on the east side and the south side and decides the development proposed for the west side is okay. Or they could find that putting 60 duplexes on one lot is too excessive to allow without modification. Either way, commissioners, you need to trust the staff review process. A prime example is the Ecumenical Campus Ministries building. It received designation in 2008. At the same time, the Oriad Hotel went up across the street. Historic designation is not a development death sentence, despite what some have claimed in our world of alternative facts. It's also false to say the church is weaponizing the historic process. The church's lawsuit with the city concerns the definition of duplexes and has nothing to do with the historic character of the property. This designation is not a backdoor way to stop development. If it was, why did the church spend 3 years on a lawsuit, which is, by the way, still pending? Also, your own staff had no trouble separating the two issues. They recommended landmark designation for the church. You should do the same. In conclusion, FPC's nomination is for the property, not just the building. Furthermore, since there's no factual reason to deny FPC this designation, your choice is clear. You should vote yes on this issue. I'll take any questions this time. Seeing none, thank you.
My name is Dr. Justin Spees. I think Presbyterians are great people. I really do. And, they're Christians. And I think Christians are great people. And they do a lot of good things for a lot of people, for the homeless. One of the things that Christians do that are a good thing is that they're against abortion. They're against baby murder. All followers of Christ should be against murdering little babies in the womb. I saw a statistic on NPR just the other day that said in 2023 there were 1,026,390 abortions in the United States that year.
Sir, Sir, Mr. Spees, is this germane to the property in question?
Bart, I'm talking about Christians here and how they're against abortion and how just horrific. Just think of the horror of that. 1 million little babies murdered. Just think of the horror.
Sir, can you just reference the property in question?
Yeah, the property in question is a church of God, and God is against murdering babies. And so I'm pointing out that the reason why Christians are good people is that they're against murdering little babies in the womb. And I'd just like to just say just a quick little prayer, if I could, please. Dear Lord God, please open the eyes of everyone that supports murdering babies to realize what it actually is that a human life is being murdered right then and there, snuffed out completely. Lord God, please let these baby murderers, these left-wing lunatics, please open their eyes to the fact that out of those 1,026,390 murdered babies, a good percentage of them are going to be trans babies in the future. So they are killing a lot of trans babies, and that in itself seems like a human rights violation in their eyes. Talk about a genocide. Talk about a genocide of the trans community. I mean, just run the odds there of how many of those babies were trans babies. And I pray, Lord, that they begin to use their logic that those will be trans kids in the future. And they don't want to hurt them when they're born, so I pray that they don't want to hurt them when they're in the womb. And then, Lord, I pray that they take that logic a step further and just realize that they're all babies. They're all little babies. And that they realize the true horror that it is to kill 1 million little babies for no reason whatsoever. I pray, Lord, that you open their eyes. And Lord God, I thank you for making this great country where I'm allowed to come in here and say what I just said because I have free speech to do it. Thank you, God. I love you.
So as I was listening to the previous speaker, a person back here commented that it's just like 68 or something to that effect. I don't have a problem with the historic designation, but I'd like to know how much has been spent defending this lawsuit. Because it does become pretty germane to any story about myself or Justin, how much the city's spending on those lawsuits. And so if the city's been defending a lawsuit against them from the Presbyterian Church for 3 years, I would think that maybe somebody at the Lawrence Journal-World might want to try to report on that if they weren't so biased. I don't know. But I won't take up any more of your time. I just want to point out that the discussion in here only goes one way, and that's the way they want it.
Can I have the exhibit that was prearranged?
Yeah. Kurt, this is the public comment.
Thank you very much. My name is James Peterson, and I'm the president of Park 25, Inc., the apartment community southwest of the First Presbyterian Church. Our primary focus is providing affordable housing, a mission that we share with other neighbors of First Presbyterian Church. Over the last 6 months, since March of this year, Park 25 has been objecting to inclusion of our property within any context area that would be created by approval of the FPC application for additional local historic recognition. This morning, I sent a letter to the city commissioners which addressed a couple of questions that have come up in recent meetings. In that letter, I contrasted the city commission question about enclosed trash dumpsters behind a historic building with the existing FPC enclosed trash dumpster enclosure in front of their building. I concluded that any context area which is an area of increased review and enforcement of architectural standards against the neighbors of FPC should not extend beyond the low-quality structures that FPC has voluntarily erected in their parking lot, especially in front of their building. And I know we have a little difference of opinion on what the front of the building is, whether it's where the front door is or
Can you address us, sir?
or which side of it was a disagreement with staff, which side is the front. We asked the City Commission to balance the desires of FPC for additional local historic recognition against the legitimate business needs of neighboring property taxpayers. And our suggestion is to grant the FPC historic recognition that is centered on the Trinity doorway, which is the front door of the church. Doing so would give the church all the recognition that they have publicly said that they want and would be consistent with city precedent of recognizing individual elements instead of entire structures. It would also protect surrounding businesses from attack using the HRC code as a weapon. As Mr. Southard of FPC has privately told us, there are non-public reasons for the FPC application, such as stormwater concerns and traffic concerns on Crestline Drive, which is the back of the church faces Crestline Drive. Other commenters have brought to light that if the application is approved, FPC will be the youngest historic structure recognized by Lawrence. And there is no additional direct benefit to FPC for obtaining local historic status. They did gain some benefit from getting state recognition.
Time.
Sir, that's your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Marisa Peterson, wife of James from Park 25. Tonight, I would like to share some research conclusions I have discovered regarding how historic preservation ordinances have been weaponized. The 3-minute comment time does not allow for detailed review of these cases from all over the country, but the research is clear that historic preservation codes often end up stifling affordable housing supply. In light of this information, we are respectfully requesting that the City Commission limit the church's historic designation to that 250-foot radius context area around the Trinity doorway. This action would comply with your ordinance and satisfy FPC's desire for local historic recognition while not subjecting neighboring housing providers on 3 sides of the church to unnecessary and harmful regulation. I will share excerpts from 2 different articles. The first article from Forbes, titled Historic Designations Are Ruining Cities, from December of 2019, was written by urban planning expert Dr. Adam Millsap. The second article, The Dark Side of Historic Preservation, was published online in March of 23 by attorney and university professor Timothy Sandifer. To be clear, the remainder of my comments are all direct quotes from these experts. While there are cultural and historic benefits associated with preserving some especially important historical properties, there are also costs. Compliance costs for residents, permitting delays, restrictions that limit housing supply, and too often, these costs are downplayed and even ignored. When the government orders historic preservation by law, the resulting costs are typically imposed on individual property owners in the form of expensive mandates, or on would-be owners in the form of a higher cost for housing. Bureaucrats often deem structures historic, even though they lack genuine historical value, and the historic declaration is merely a manipulative effort to control how people use their own land. Far more common are cases in which preservation ordinances reduce or eliminate property owners' rights, and courts refuse to enforce the Constitution's guarantees of just compensation or due process. The regulations in officially designated historic neighborhoods can be so Byzantine and confining, not to mention subjective, that property owners may find it impossible to replace or even upgrade even the ordinary fixtures of their homes. Such rules typically subject every choice an owner might make, from lights to windows to paint colors, to review by layers of government bureaucracy. If a city or state wants to bear some cost in order to fund a museum, that goes through some kind of appropriation process, where the cost is assessed and subject to scrutiny. Historic preservation, by contrast, tends to operate as a kind of ratchet, where more and more stuff is added to the list over time, and there's little assessment of the overall impact. Ambiguous rules, such as those that require a renovation to be compatible with the character of the neighborhood, can mean anything. Consequently, they often end up meaning whatever politicians say they mean. More than a half-century ago, the U.S. Supreme Court said that any law that requires people to get a permit or a license...
It's time, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Monte Sokup. I'm the Kansas University Endowment Association. I've been watching this process and, hoping that there could be some reasonable outcome. The way the current recommendation is, this environs area touches the Kansas University Endowment Association property on the north side of Clinton Parkway. And I think there's an unintended consequence maybe of the way this is applied, in the sense that the parcel that's north of there is basically almost a 160-acre parcel. So the review process then impacts projects that are over half a mile away from the actual structure. So I guess my request tonight is that maybe we consider designating just the building or just the element to shrink the size. That would help also the affordable housing project that's next door, the affordable housing project we will be doing as part of our crossing project, and other projects at the university, including the KU Innovation Park expansion of the next 100,000 square foot building, office building in this city. So that project will obviously come under this review process. So I'm just asking that maybe we consider shrinking that size to reduce that environs area, similar to what the national regulations do. Thank you.
Ready for me?
Yep. Oh,
My
sir.
name is James Kessinger. I'm the attorney for the Park 25 apartments. Those apartments are located on 2401 West 25th Street here in Lawrence. I want to start off by saying thank you. From what I've seen tonight, I wouldn't want to sit in your position. It seems like you've gone through a lot, both tonight and in recent events, and just say thank you for your service. I want to make 2 points tonight on behalf of Park 25 Apartments. One is in relation to how you designate the Park 25 apartments, and the other one is to your ordinance. Your ordinance, the definition of context area, says that the context area is a designated 250-foot radius around a landmark. But it goes on to say, and it specifies that the 250-foot radius is that area that reflects the context of the landmark. So if you look at the picture you saw earlier of the context area, what historic thing are you preserving outside of the church? There's nothing historic in this area that you need to protect. So according to your own ordinance, there is no reason to extend the context area beyond the boundary line because it doesn't serve the purpose of your ordinance and it doesn't meet the language of your ordinance. Now, as far as Park 25 goes, we would ask, we're not trying to interfere with them getting their designation and adding to their list of designations, although it doesn't give them any added benefit to have this one because they already get all the tax benefits that they would have out of the national and the state. But for our purposes, if you would designate the Trinity Door as the landmark, then it would not impact Park 25 Apartments. Now, the Park 25 Apartments is a campus. It has 27 buildings. If you designate the building as the landmark, the church is the landmark, you still catch 2 of our buildings. And according to your ordinance, then all of the property within, all of the property that it touches gets sucked in. But then also, unless you want to have 2 odd buildings out there, the next time the Park 25 Apartments upgrades or performs maintenance, then you really are sucking in 27 buildings. That's not fair. That's not what the ordinance was intended to do, and it's really not fair. There's no reason to protect the dumpsters. There's no reason to protect the storage sheds. There's no reason to protect their tripping hazards. They've lined their edge of their property with these logs, basically tripping hazards. The blue awning on their building is not historic. But you could give everybody what they're asking if you just designate the Trinity entrance as the landmark. And so that's what
That's time, sir.
Thank you very much.
Evening, Mayor. The first thing I have is on behalf of another property owner, Block and Company, that was instructed to bring copies, and I brought those for sharing to you. And I don't know if you got them by email or not, but they're from another property owner who could not be here tonight. So my name is Greg Musil. I'm here on behalf of the owner and the proposed developer on the west side of Crestline. You remanded this to the Historic Resources Commission specifically to review the context area and its impact and determine the use of radius, in my opinion, as used in the ordinance. The HRC did not respond in any positive way. We know the Historic Resources Code is being used as a lever, called a weapon, a lever in the litigation against the city, where they sued the city. It's not just about the definition of duplex, it's to stop the housing development that's now 4 years old in its effort on the west side of Crestline. If it was not being used as a lever, here's what the church would do. It would agree to delay consideration until the lawsuit was over. It would agree to limit the 250-foot radius so it didn't affect either the west of Crestline or the other properties that are here tonight, that have been here before, that have been to the Historic Resources Commission before. It would agree not to protest the Fountain Residential Project if it needed a certificate of approval. And in reality, the church has refused all of those efforts. Mr. Peterson asked them before the last City Commission meeting or HRC meeting, will you agree to limit it and we'll support the application? He never received the courtesy of a reply. The church does not need this designation for the purposes it first said, which was to get tax credits for solar panels on the roof. It doesn't need the local designation for that. The context area that Ms. Zollner explained to you, do you know what it means? Do you sit there and know what it means, what kind of approval we're going to have to get? Do you know how it will be interpreted by future staff? I don't either. My clients don't. These folks don't. Their lenders don't. The potential buyers don't. And that's an impact on all of these property owners. We asked the commission to take a couple of steps. First of all, deny the application without prejudice. Let them bring it back after their suit against the city of Lawrence is concluded, or continue the application until the lawsuit against the city of Lawrence is concluded. Approve the application for the Trinity door or structure only and use a true definition of radius. Mr. Southard said, enforce this plain language of the ordinance. Radius means a point with a circle, not 250 feet from the property line. At a minimum, clearly state on the record that this context area, as I think Ms. Zollner did last time, there's no context to it. Don't come back in 5 years and argue that Mr. Peterson can't improve his apartments because it's not compatible with the church. And apply your ordinance language using radius. To do nothing or to approve this now undermines the credibility of this commission, undermines the credibility of the Human Resources Code, and undermines the credibility of your code in total, because you are doing something that is used as a lever in litigation, and it will not just be used now.
Sir,
It will
thank
be
you.
used in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Commission.
Any additional, looks like, no, not in the room. Sherry, any on Zoom?
No, Mayor.
Okay, I will bring it back to us for discussion.
I have a question.
Yes, absolutely.
Lynn, could you show the slide that had the building with the blue and then the outer, I think they were hatched marks? Can we make that bigger? Here we.
Is that the one you're looking for?
Yeah, that's the one I was looking at. Okay, so the blue area is the area that the HRC said was adequate. That would.
Well, the HRC was of the opinion that the recommendation is for the entire property as submitted, but that if you were to just look at the historic structure without the parcel, it would still meet the criteria in Chapter 22 for designation.
Okay.
And I may get Randy to chime in a little bit. We've been through the code, and it looks like the city commission options are to approve the nomination as submitted, or deny the nomination as submitted, or remand it back to the Historic Resources Commission. It doesn't look like Chapter 22 allows for the decrease from what was submitted to the Historic Resources Commission as the landmark application, and recommended by the HRC as the landmark application. And I'll let Randy, I think he's online, if he wants to jump in with that. Maybe.
Can't hear you, Randy.
Can't hear you, Randy.
Looks like he's unmuted, so I'm not sure. Randy, it shows that you're unmuted on our end. Okay.
Must not be connected.
Can't hear you.
And while we're waiting on Randy, I can go ahead and let you know that staff did have the opportunity to review all the building permits for the proposed construction to the west of this property, and using the evaluation and the design criteria in Chapter 22, staff would recommend approval for that layout and for the design of those structures. So we did go ahead and look at that, even though they were submitted before this nomination was actually approved, just as a courtesy.
Okay, Lynn, can we go back to that, until we can get Randy on? Can you go back to that map, that layout again?
Yeah, sorry, Lynn, I stopped sharing in case that would help.
Okay.
But you should be able to share again.
I want to make sure I understand approve as submitted. What does that actually mean?
So the submission was for the landmark with the parcel, the legal description of the property. And so
It's that one right there?
that would be this one right here.
That's the prove as submitted. That would include.
This would be approved as submitted and as recommended by the HRC.
And would it include the blue line outline area?
Yep, the area between the solid blue area and the blue outline would be the context area.
And so again, that whole area indicate that's approved as submitted.
That's correct.
Okay. And then the one that you were showing with the pink and the blue?
This shows if just the building were to be landmarked, the context area, that 250 feet, would be this blue area. And then the hatched area is shown for illustrative purposes. That would be if the whole parcel were listed.
So in the blue area, it just extends on to Clinton Parkway. It doesn't go across. Is that?
Correct. It would still catch the development on the west side of Crestline and also the apartments to the south, but it would no longer get the development for the Housing Authority or for the Endowment Association.
Got it.
I think what you're...
Excuse me, Commissioner Finkel. Could everybody pause your conversations until, later? We can pretty much hear everything in this room, so I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Continue, Commissioner Finkel.
Yeah. But I think what you're saying and trying to have Randy talk about is if we wanted to approve the blue area on this particular, we cannot do that. We either have to deny, approve the pink area, or remand to the same thing we did last time, which when we remanded, they sent it back to us with the pink area.
That's correct.
I did not realize that.
But we can't parse that out if we wanted to.
That is my understanding of the way that Chapter 22 is written.
So Randy
I don't know
might.
if Randy can give a...
I think might be able.
This is Randy Larkin, Deputy
There we
City
go.
Attorney.
Yeah.
All right, very good. Yes, Lynn is absolutely correct. The application is for the entire property. It was sent back to the HRC. They recommended again for the entire property, so the application is for the entire property. So you must either approve for the entire property or disapprove for the entire property or send it back to the HRC for further consideration if there is anything else you'd want them to consider. But that's your options tonight.
And
I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, I just had a quick one. Yeah. Randy, so if we were to not approve this tonight, what would be could they go ahead and reapply as well? And even if it was the same application as this time for the entire property, or could they reapply as well? It's just for the building itself?
This is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. If they reapplied for the entire property, there's a 365-day waiting period. If they applied for the same, just for the building only or for the entrance only, I don't know whether that would be a substantial difference where they would be allowed to do that. But if they brought back the same application, there would have to be a 365-day waiting period.
Okay, sorry.
that was my question. You covered my question.
And if they brought it back with just the temple as the designation, then that would the radius would not extend beyond the property boundaries. Is that correct? How would
If it was just for the doorway?
Yeah,
or for
yeah,
the,
I'm sorry,
okay.
yeah.
The doorway, let's see, pull that one up. Would be this image, and yes, it does just go basically around the property here.
Right away.
The footage does?
The 250-foot context area. Staff has not measured that. This was supplied by the property owner to the south.
Okay.
So Lynn, going back to the one you showed, this one hasn't been measured, but the one that you're showing on your previous that shows the differences, that's been measured?
Yes, this
the
was
structure?
done by planning staff.
Okay. So essentially, we're showing a difference in suggested appearances of what the 250 from the structure is.
That's correct.
Mayor, can I?
Yes.
Yeah, so my understanding, though, is the map with the smaller image and radius that is confined to the property in question only includes the area where the historic feature is located, and from that, and your map displays the entire building, the blue section, the entire building as the protected property. Is that correct?
Yeah, the map that they're showing would only be designating these 3 doors right here instead of the whole building.
Yeah, just the front entrance there, or the official entrance.
The Trinity doors.
So that's where they drew their map from. I want to make sure I understand.
That is my
They picked that
understanding.
spot. Is that what was did you review the previous submissions to the National and State Historical Review, and are these the purpose for the preservation mainly, from my understanding, or what?
No.
Why would we choose this location on the map for that purpose?
The National Register of Historic Places nomination is for the entire building because of the architectural style and the architect design style of the building. And it includes significant things like the placement of structures, the placements of windows, and one of the key character defining elements of the structure is the apostles' windows that would not be included if you just designated that front door.
Right, I want to make sure I understood that. So they drew a point, and that entrance drew 250 250 feet in a radius, and you took the building, plotted it, and drew a 250 radius around the actual footing of the building. That's the blue area, and then the property boundary is the red area, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
I
Looks
guess, are we in discussion now?
Yeah, we are. I see Commissioner Sellers doing some figuring over there, but you can go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm
Yeah.
still trying to formulate this in a way.
Well, Randy threw me for a loop there. I was ready to support the building, the context area from around the building. If that's not an option, I guess I don't support the greater context given the size of that lot. I mean, I know we often do that with a house or something, but the lot is, not that big in context. So this is a very big lot, and so guess given my options, I'll probably not be, since I can't support the blue area, I guess I'd vote to deny and see if they reapply for the other area.
Lynn, Randy had talked about needing to wait 365 days if it was the same application. So if they submitted a new one for just part of it, the doorway, would that be considered not having to wait that 365 days?
I think I'd have to work with Randy on that to see if it would be considered a substantially different application. With the way the code's written, there is description if it's a historic district, but there is not a description if it's an individual landmark. So that is something that we would have to research and try to figure out.
Okay.
I was pulling the code up to see, because I deal with substantive changes, so we're essentially, legal would be the final say on who has the final say on determining substantive change. I feel like this is a deja vu of something I dealt with work, where legal gave the opinion, but essentially at this point, the commission had the final say, the committee had the final say in it. So would it be the same effects to that? Legal would issue the opinion or the guidance, and it would be up to the HRC to determine whether or not they agree with legal's decision of this being substantive, if we were to deny the application.
Having never done this before, I cannot outline for you the process.
I'm giving you guidance.
I wish that I could.
Go this way.
But there again, that's something we'd have to work with Randy on to try to figure out what that process would look like.
Randy, you don't want to give us a sneak peek, do you?
Randy, there you go.
He's got his glasses on.
This is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. I mean, typically with other provisions of the zoning code, it's whether or not there are provisions that require substantive changes or substantial changes to the application before you can reapply. I would guess that applies here. If you gave me about 5 minutes, I know I ran across that previously, and I can get back with you on that.
Okay. Lynn, you're on for 5.
And I do know it says that for historic district nominations.
Okay.
I'm not sure that that includes individual landmark nominations.
Okay.
And I'm sorry to jump in real quick. Lynn, there have been other instances where the building itself has just been nominated.
We have 2 other instances that I'm aware of. One was the Santa Fe Depot, because the city did not own the land, we just owned the building, and the railroad was not interested in landmarking the land. So in that case, we just landmarked the building. There's also a property at the Douglas County Fairgrounds that was just listed as the house and not the entire fairgrounds property, because it was such a large property and it did not reflect the context of the house when it was constructed or through its historic significant period. The difference here is that all of this land was actually part of the context for the First Presbyterian Church property, and it has developed in different ways, and that development pattern is part of the history of this property. And so you have commercial and you have residential. You have 2-story structures, 3-story structures. And if you look at the design criteria in Chapter 22, the new Chapter 22 has very specific design criteria on how to review certificate of approvals. And things like if it's a shed and it's less than 250 feet, it doesn't require building permit, it doesn't get any review. Trash enclosures don't get any type of review. Most things except for new construction, demolition, and building additions greater than 20% of the existing footprint are all administrative reviews done with the building permit within that same time frame that the building permit goes through the process. So the new Chapter 22 tries to embrace not having any kind of impact on properties in that context area. And if it is something that's not visible from the public right-of-way, it doesn't get reviewed.
Do we designate that the lynching memorial, the bridge pier, is that designated as just
Yes, it's just the pier.
Just the pier itself.
In the land that it sits on, yes.
Yeah, so not the entire parcel?
Not the entire, it doesn't actually have a parcel, and so that's why we did that one that way.
In regard, I'm sorry.
I have an answer, if that's okay.
Yeah. Yes.
This is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. The previous application cannot be resubmitted for 365 days. but a different application that might involve the same property or the same landmark could be. So if they altered it substantially or it didn't involve, for example, the entire property, it would be acceptable within the next 365 days. Otherwise, if they submitted one for the entire property, then it would not be permitted during that period of time.
Wonderful. Thank you, Randy.
Okay.
Randy, I hate to beat this, but they could submit one if it's just the front door area, if they decide to go that route. That would be a different, separate application, and then they could do that within the 3 days.
This is Randy Larkin. Yes, they could submit one that would just involve the structure. They could involve one that would involve a portion of the structure. They could submit one that would involve a portion of the interior of the structure. But those would all be different than the entire property.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's where I would lean, is to just have it, if they would want to reapply, because I was thinking we could do just part of the property myself. We can't, obviously, so that's where I was leaning. So
I would also lean that way as well. It's just such a big parcel, and it affects so many other pieces.
Can I just, I was just doing some math. I think I calculated roughly 30,000 square foot of building, 6 acres of land. That leaves 5.5 acres of buffer land on their own property alone to really protect, not including right-of-way from property to the north. I feel like there's a substantial buffer here, and to have this entire parcel be included feels overly restrictive for me, so.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sellers?
Nope, I was just going to say, it sounds like to me that we're all in some way consensus of denying the application. I think just a matter of how it comes back to us, or whether it comes back to us, is that will be determined by the applicant. So
Yep.
I don't know if we need to belabor the point with soliloquies and whatnot, and just get to the point of.
So Lynn, what is
Denying.
the action, I guess, since it's to adopt the ordinance? Do they need to move to deny?
They would need to move to deny the landmark nomination for First Presbyterian Church located at 2415 Clinton Parkway, and identify the reasons for the denial. Is that right, Randy?
This is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. Yes, there are certain criteria that need to be followed, and they're set at 22-406. There's 5 particular criteria that must be followed, and if it meets them or does not meet them, then that is at the discretion of the HRC to whether to approve or not to approve. And you step into the shoes of the HRC. So, for example, you might find that the building has some architectural integrity or some architectural meaning historically, but that the property is too large, or for some other type of reason, that you can find a reason to deny it, as long as you look at the criteria and say, it does not meet these, or it does meet these, but there's some issues regarding it. But we need to look at those criteria going forward and making a decision. And Lynn, those are at 2406 or 22-406, I believe.
I think we can.
Yeah, we can add them.
Can you show that on the slide on the TV?
They're 22-407. There are 6 criteria, and then plus the structure or object has to have certain integrity of location, design, materials, and workmanship. to then also qualify. So basically there's 7.
Okay, how should we line this up?
Yeah, I apologize. There are 5 listed criteria, and then the 6th one is that integrity of structure. And
So I think, Randy, what we're saying is that in each of these, that the area associated, at least what I was saying was that, I guess I shouldn't speak for everyone else, that the structure might meet those, but the area associated doesn't meet 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that large surrounding area.
This is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney, and that might very well be your conclusion that it meets like item number 4, but maybe the entire property itself does not, something of that nature. But those need to be your findings. Something along those lines where you look at those criteria.
And we can obviously continue to discuss that appeal, but Randy, is this, I know sometimes we send it back to you to do findings. Is that something you would want to do in this case, or we could ask you to do in this case to bring back the findings?
This is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. Absolutely, you could ask the staff to bring back findings of fact and conclusions of law, and we definitely would. Now, you would definitely have to state what those findings were, or those conclusions were, so that we could then bring back something in paper for you to approve at a future meeting.
Well, I would definitely agree that, part of my consideration is the size of the parcel itself, and just the fact that there's so many different kinds of structures and types of, things associated very near the parcel. Usually it's, when we're talking about things of this sort, it's usually things that are a little bit more similar, so it kind of makes a little bit of sense. So it makes it a little bit more challenging when all of those things are just about as old as the structure in question itself. So not necessarily newcomers.
So Commissioner Finkeldyer, are you wanting to send it back with
Well, I guess,
with findings? What I was looking at 22407 hold on. Lost it. Under 22407, I guess A1 is a little bit more broad. It kind of speaks to several of the arguments that we've heard this evening, but it does allow, as far as it relates to the structure and designation, as whether it's the structure or it's an entry point or it's the property. I mean, I understand you were saying you thought maybe 3 and 4. I like 1 because it seems to be a bit more broad to be inclusive to several of the arguments, at least from what I've heard this evening. But I guess I want to understand the bringing it back, sending it to staff for facts. Does that impact the applicant's ability to reapply?
yeah. I guess I read these 5 as being, if any one of them applies, we could approve it. And so I was looking at each one of those to see if I thought the area applied. So, like with A1, the structure might have, partly made a contribution to the broad patterns of the city history, but, the area around it does not. The area associated around the church doesn't affect the lives of significant persons. The area around the church is not associated with the city's culture, the cultural location of the city. The area, and for the area around the church, it's not distinct or have artistic value. And the area around the church does not yield any important prehistory or history. Whereas,
Yeah, if I'm-
personally, I believe the structure does, but I don't believe the area around it does.
when they talked about the area, that's what I would say.
Yeah.
This is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. I just wanted to bring your attention to the fact that area probably is talking more along the lines of a historic district. We're talking here about an entire site as opposed to the structure. So the reference might be to the site as opposed to the area.
Oh, I see.
Site, not the structure. I just wanted to draw your attention to that.
Oh, under the code area, it really talks about a district area as opposed to a site.
That's correct. And then the site would be the entire property here that were involved. A structure or object then is like a condensation of the site or something smaller that would exist within a site. And the area would be like a historic district.
So if I made a motion along the lines we were just discussing, using the term site instead of area, would that give you enough direction to bring back a findings of fact?
This is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. Absolutely. That would be the correct terminology.
Okay.
Are we ready for a motion now?
Yes, I am.
I would move to deny the landmark designation for 2415 Clinton Parkway to the Lawrence Register of Historic Places as applied, based upon the findings of fact that the site does not make a significant contribution to the broad patterns of the city. The site is not associated with the lives of significant persons in the city's past. The site is not associated with the city's cultural location. The site does not have high artistic value or significant artistic value, and the site does not yield information related to prehistory or history.
I'd second that motion.
Question. For the findings of fact, do we need to include all five, or did we just need to include just one? Or more, it says one or more, so I didn't know if it was your pleasure, Commissioner Finkeldine, to include all five.
I think of it, and maybe Randy could correct me, I include all five because if we found it met one of those and not the other four, that would be enough for approval. So we need to find.
This is Randy Larkin, Commissioner Finkeldine is correct. We probably should look at all five.
Okay.
So those are the criteria. If it meets one of them, and then within your discretion, then you could grant the landmark designation.
Want to remove, or you want to?
No.
There's a
So we have
motion
a
on the
second.
table.
Well, second, that's why I call for the question.
Okay.
For discussion.
Okay, there's a first and a second. Okay. All those, I guess, in favor of denial, please say aye.
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 And it sounds like there are none opposed. So, Randy, have you gotten everything you needed? Maybe it took off. I don't know.
This is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. Yes, Mayor, we have what we
Thank you.
need to our findings of fact and conclusions of law, and we will bring them back to you either the first meeting in October or the second meeting in October for you to review and approve. And if you approve them, then the mayor will sign, and then that will be the effective date of the decision of the City Commission.
Okay, then the date that, the applicant can work from if they chose to.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
That's correct.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Sherry, do you have everything you need?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. I'll go ahead and give everyone a chance to go ahead and leave if they need to. Okay. All right. And
Anybody want a copy?
what's that?
Anybody want a copy of the agenda?
They should be out there in the, they're usually outside.
Yeah, there should be some outside. I'm sorry, sir.
Good job, Patrick.
Hmm?
Good job, Patrick,
Yeah.
delivering the agenda.
Yeah. Okay, I'll move us on to item 2, receive brick streets and sidewalk policy and provide feedback. Okay.
Kurt, were you able to upload my presentation?
What presentation? No, if you just talk for a second, I'll find it, sorry.
Okay, thank you. I emailed it to you just after 5.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. Hello, Commissioners. Thank you for having me today. I've got a brief presentation to go over some of the history of the Brick Streets and Sidewalks policy, the development process, and then ultimately what the policy includes. Name. It sort of goes along with the staff report I included in your agenda packet.
Oh, can I jump in? Can you please give everybody your name just for...
Absolutely. C.C. Riley. I'm a transportation planner too with the City of Lawrence.
Thank you.
Sorry about that, Mayor. Thank you, Kurt. Alrighty, thank you for your patience. Alrighty. The Brick Streets and Sidewalks policy was developed as a means to provide standards for city staff to follow when managing the historic...
Cece, can you pause for just a second? I apologize. Hello, all. Can you probably keep down your conversations?
Sorry.
Thank you. Continue, Cece.
Absolutely. The policy aimed to provide standards for city staff to follow when managing the historic asset of brick sidewalks and brick streets. The Brick Streets and Sidewalks policy balances the preservation of Lawrence's historic brick streets and sidewalks with the need for modern accessibility and infrastructure maintenance. It includes design and construction standards, maintenance standards, preservation guidelines, and a whole lot else for both brick sidewalks and brick streets. The comprehensive plan, Plan 2040, identifies brick streets and sidewalks as a community resource and states that we should honor the vibrant history of the city by protecting appropriate historical assets which contribute to our sense of need or our sense of place. It also states the goal to protect and maintain publicly owned historic resources and a need to develop a multimodal transportation system that safety, efficiency, and equity serve all people with a focus on prosperity for all and environmental sustainability. This policy will make a significant progress on meeting these goals within Plan 2040. City staff and the community at large have long awaited a citywide brick policy. I'd like to give a bit of background on this topic and the past efforts that the city and the community have undertaken regarding brick streets and sidewalks. In 2005, the City of Lawrence Public Works Department did an inventory of all public streets to assess their condition and acknowledged that some brick streets were in need of repair or restoration, but had no standards for how to manage them. The city auditor echoed this need for guidance on Brick Street maintenance in a report given to City Commission in 2011. In 2013, the Public Works Department assessed Lawrence streets for their condition and proposed a maintenance plan. Of note, this policy was written only addressing brick streets, not sidewalks, and primarily included setting priorities for which brick streets would be maintained dependent on their pavement condition, or PCI score. The policy was brought before City Commission on January 21st, 2014, and was not adopted. Rather, the City Commission directed staff to rework the policy with more community feedback and Historic Resources Commission input, but progress seemed to stall amid other city priorities. Years went by, and in 2020, city engineers began crafting a new policy with input from neighborhoods with the highest number of brick streets: East Lawrence, Old West Lawrence, Pinckney, and Oriad. Residents wrote out their priorities, emphasizing historic preservation and aesthetics in the original townsite area. But the document had a great deal of implementation challenges and was ultimately shelved due to staffing changes and the COVID-19 pandemic. These efforts over the last 10+ years have been a great foundation to build this new policy off of, in addition to the policy building blocks utilized, which I'll speak to in a few slides. Another piece of background that I feel is important to consider are the existing standards for brick streets and brick sidewalks in the city, as well as a visualization, of where the existing exposed brick streets and brick sidewalks are located. On the left side of your screen, you can see a map of the exposed brick streets shown in red and brick sidewalks, to the best of our knowledge, in blue. They're primarily found in the original townsite area with a few segments of brick streets and sidewalks extending past it. And there are both original and reconstructed brick streets, as well as new and old brick sidewalks in varying conditions. Public streets, both brick and non-brick, are the responsibility of the city to maintain. However, without having adopted brick street standards, the city has handled brick streets in various ways and on a case-by-case basis. Sidewalks, however, are the responsibility of the property owner to maintain and keep in good condition, as stated by Kansas State Statute 12-1808. Chapter 16 of the City Code also identifies concrete as the only standard material for sidewalks and allows brick sidewalks to be reconstructed or repaired only where they currently exist. The Sidewalk Improvement Program and the ADA Transition Plan for the public right-of-way have both waited for a brick sidewalk policy to provide guidance on how and where brick sidewalks should be constructed in the public right-of-way. All this background information leads us to the big question: why the brick streets and sidewalks policy is important, and how we were able to develop a policy which balances the many competing values and desires of our community within the real-world fiscal constraints of the City of Lawrence. As you saw from the history timeline, city staff have long identified a need for a policy on which to handle these historic brick assets, which so many people within our community have come to love. This policy will create consistency in how our standards are applied for brick streets, better the sidewalk network accessibility, allow homeowners to better understand what is expected of them for brick sidewalk maintenance, and better our city's ability to manage public infrastructure. Additionally, this policy development process was unlike any of the other prior brick policy efforts which came before it. It was led by transportation planning staff and utilized pertinent policy building blocks to ensure that it reflects the community's values and priorities, while also providing practical implementation strategies for the City of Lawrence. These building blocks include the staff working group, the MMTC Brick Policy Steering Committee, and citywide community engagement. I'm going to speak to some of those policy building blocks through the next 3 slides. First, the steering committee. Multimodal Transportation Commission advised city staff to create a steering committee of 9 community stakeholders when initiating the policy on February 5th earlier this year. They specified that the steering committee should include members from community organizations, groups, and agencies, as are listed on the screen in front of you. The steering committee met nearly every month since March to review public comment, provide feedback and guidance on how they wanted the policy to feel and act, and reviewed the language drafted by the staff working group. The steering committee was vital to the success of the policy, and I want to sincerely thank each of them for the time and effort they volunteered to invest in the policy. They acted as conduits for various important groups such as key neighborhoods, accessibility groups, historic advocates, and relevant government professionals. They were able to effectively and personally communicate the happenings of the committee out to their respective groups, as well as filter in the information and feedback they were getting from their peers and neighborhoods back to the city. As the policy was taking shape, city legal and infrastructure professionals, like the streets crew manager, city engineer, and local masons, became more engaged with the process to assure that the policy works not only theoretically, but also meets our legal expectations and is practical and implementable for the folks in the field who will be doing the work. Another important piece of the policy building blocks was the staff working group, which is made up of phenomenal city staff from pertinent departments and divisions, serving as subject matter experts for how best to manage the historic asset of brick streets and brick sidewalks. The staff working group included 14 members of city staff listed on the screen in front of you. We met before each steering committee meeting and attended open house events. Their technical expertise was respected and appreciated by the steering committee and the public alike when special questions or concerns were raised. The staff work group assured that the policy was practical and realistic to the real-world constraints of the city of Lawrence, especially considering the budget, staff time, and knowledge, and assuring that the policy aligns with the existing plans and strategies of the city. I'm also thankful to point out that many of them have joined the meeting online and in person, should you all have any questions for specific staff on specific issues. Finally, the third policy building block that set this policy up for success was the use of a citywide community engagement strategy. Throughout the policy development process, we assured that Lawrence residents were able to provide feedback and input on the policy. In addition to sharing public engagement activities on city social media, staff also maintained a project website, which was kept up to date with recordings of every meeting, links to staff presentations and memos, and the draft policy as it was written and revised. As you can see from the policy development timeline on the screen, we've had a busy year, assuring that the policy has ample public engagement opportunities while making the best of our volunteer steering committee's time. I wanted to visually express that this policy development process has been in the public eye, with frequent check-ins from the public through public hearings, engagement activities like open houses, and active public comment. The same information is in your staff report on page 5 in a list format rather than all of the colors and shapes. Now I'm going to transition away from the background of the work that went into the policy development process and start to discuss how the policy aligns with the strategic plan and the ongoing commitments we make to our community. Guided by the strategic plan, this policy will help deliver the KPIs associated with connected city and strong welcoming neighborhood outcomes. Specifically, standards have been developed to assure design and installation of brick streets and sidewalks are well-maintained, functional, and efficient pieces of public infrastructure. The policy supports accessible and sustainable methods for safely moving people and goods throughout the community and the city. Additionally, the policy recognizes that brick streets and brick sidewalks are character defining to the historic nature of the area surrounding the original Lawrence town site and its neighborhoods. The policy supports preserving well-maintained historic brick sidewalks and streets while identifying where reconstruction is most appropriate. As you are all well aware, the way we do our work as public servants is as important as what we do for our community. We knew from the start of this policy development process that there were competing priorities, both for the community and staff, and that tough decisions would need to be made in order to develop a successful policy. The obvious competing priorities were between preserving history and developing new accessible infrastructure and the costs associated with those improvements. From the start, staff and the steering committee wanted to find a way forward that would accommodate these conflicting priorities. By focusing on finding that perfect middle ground, we are able to create a policy which supports a place where folks of all abilities can travel comfortably, and we honor the pride our community has in its rich history. The key to understanding how the community prioritized competing values was through a citywide survey we conducted at the very start of the policy development process. The survey listed out 10 values and asked each respondent to rank them both for brick sidewalks and brick streets. We received about 180 responses, and you can see that ranked list on the screen in front of you. Additionally, the open comments we received were linked on page 8 of the staff report and are available on the project website. Understanding the community's priorities ultimately led staff and the steering committee on how to frame the direction the policy would take. When considering brick sidewalks, safety, accessibility, and sustainability were the top 3 values prioritized by the general public. This was reflected in the policy by including clear and detailed installation standards, prioritizing the comfortable movement of all people, especially those with limited mobility, and identifying how brick sidewalks should be maintained and where they're appropriate. When considering brick streets, safety, sustainability, and tradition were the top 3 values prioritized by the general public. This was reflected in the policy by including clear and detailed maintenance standards, prioritizing the reuse of historic bricks in street design, and identifying how exposed brick streets would be preserved and protected. Notably, safety was a top priority for both brick streets and brick sidewalks. Now we're going to get into the policy highlights for both brick sidewalks and brick streets. The next few slides, marked with the blue banner on top, are focused on sidewalk standards, and then you'll see the banner change to red, and that information is keyed in on brick streets. Additionally, I'd like to point out the little badges at the bottom right corner of the screen. These reflect the most applicable strategic plan outcome and commitments that the policy highlights reflect. As the slides change, so will the applicable badges. Now, back to the content of the slide. It's important to first highlight that this policy applies to brick sidewalks which are not meeting accessibility standards. The policy very pointedly excludes well-made, well-cared-for brick sidewalks which meet PROWAG standards. If it's in good shape, it stays put. This was the most sustainable way to apply a policy, and the steering committee felt very strongly about this aspect of the policy. PROWAG standards are federal guidelines adopted in August of 2023, which outline accessibility standards for areas in the right-of-way to assure that users of all abilities feel comfortable and safe. Notably, there are no exceptions for historic properties or historic areas when it comes to accessibility. The ADA transition plan for the public right-of-way was adopted just a few months ago and has developed a plan to repair and reconstruct all non-accessible sidewalks and ramps in the right-of-way over the next 20 years. This policy will work alongside that plan to provide standards for how brick sidewalks can be made ADA compliant and where they're appropriate. The steering committee met with Evan Carinta, ADA compliance administrator, to better understand the ADA standards. And following this meeting, they encouraged staff to develop construction standards for brick sidewalks which would meet accessibility standards and be built to last. Staff reviewed other city codes and industry best standards to develop a set of installation standards for brick sidewalks which would be durable, safe, and accessible, while also fiscally responsible, especially understanding that the cost burden of sidewalk maintenance can vary depending on material. You can see those standards in section 6.3 of the policy or on page 8 of your packet. Another aspect of the sidewalk portion of the policy I'd like to bring attention to is the brick sidewalk permissive map. This map is a tool for the public and the city staff to use, which identifies where brick sidewalks are most appropriate in the public right-of-way. It utilizes local, state, and national historic district designation, urban conservation zoning overlay districts, and the original town site plat boundary to signify which areas may have brick sidewalks reconstructed or newly installed. To reiterate what was said earlier, good brick sidewalks outside of this mapped boundary are fine to stay. This policy and this map won't remove or take away any accessible brick sidewalks anywhere in town. What the map does show is what areas property owners could choose whether to construct a public sidewalk in brick or concrete, regardless of what the existing sidewalk material is. This differs from existing city code, which states any property owner with a concrete sidewalk must stay concrete forever. Now property owners inside the mapped boundary can choose which option suits their situation best. I'd also like to point out the boundary of the permissive map was revised between the initial draft, published in June, shown on the left middle side of your screen, and the one in your packet today, on the right side, as a response to the feedback received by the public. The steering committee decided to build off the initial permissive map by adding the original town site plat And they also wanted to encourage other areas who have interest in being included in the permissive map to seek out overlay districts, like what the Oriad neighborhood has, or designated historic districts, and they would be included in the brick sidewalk permissive map. In order to be most effective and efficient with limited resources, the policy also utilizes existing plans, policies, and programs for implementation, enforcement, and funding. The policy builds on the ADA transition plan's commitment to cost partner with property owners who have non-ADA compliant sidewalks, and it goes one step further to identify where brick sidewalks can also be included in the cost partnering model. If you're inside the brick sidewalk permissive map, inside that red area from the last slide, you as a property owner are able to choose which material you'd like the sidewalk to be repaired or reconstructed in. The flow chart that was in your agenda packet and shown on the left side of the screen, I know it's kind of hard to read there, show how this decision matrix might look for a given property owner. Additionally, implementation of the brick streets and sidewalks policy will primarily be handled by the ADA transition plan, which has identified priority routes near transportation disadvantaged populations. The photo shown on the right side of your screen, the redder areas are where the GIS software has identified the most important routes to assure they're accessible due to their proximity to key destinations like schools, bus stops, healthcare, etc., and populations of people who fall under the category of transportation disadvantaged populations, which includes households with persons who have a disability, low to moderate income households, minorities, single-parent households. There's a couple others as well. Again, utilizing existing, well-designed systems and plans assures that we are acting as sound fiscal stewards and consistently making equitable decisions for our community. All right, banner changed to red, now onto brick sidewalk, or brick streets. The brick streets in Lawrence were largely constructed over 100 years ago, and many are reaching the end of their 100-year life cycle. The city has had challenging time repairing or reconstructing brick streets due to not having a policy or long-term vision from the community on how they should be handled. Repairs on asphalt-covered brick streets have also been challenging for the same reason. Without a policy, these things have been handled inconsistently and on a case-by-case basis. This policy will assist the decision-making process for where to prioritize reconstruction and resurfacing for brick streets, as well as how they should be designed and maintained. Additionally, the policy has identified all exposed brick streets and alleys and proposes to preserve them through the use of two different preservation statuses. On page 26 of your packet, you'll find the preservation prioritization for exposed brick streets map, and shown on the screen in front of you. Streets with primary preservation status, shown in red, shall remain exposed brick, and all maintenance work, including utility repairs, will prioritize completing repairs with historic brick. Streets with secondary preservation status, those shown in yellow, should remain brick. However, they may be maintained with city standard material to prioritize brick streets with primary preservation status. This policy aims to assure the exposed brick streets with higher concentrations of residential driveways are prioritized through the use of the red primary preservation status. These streets were chosen with the assistance of the staff work group and the steering committee. Should the need arise to source additional brick pavers, the policy identifies where they can be salvaged from those streets without primary preservation status, including alleys and alley aprons. On page 25 of your agenda packet, you'll find the existing conditions map, which shows a number of things. Exposed brick streets are shown in red, covered brick streets are shown in brown, and the blue, purple, and yellow lines indicate whether those streets are arterial, collector, or designated bikeways. This map is an important part of the policy as there has been interest expressed to uncover asphalt streets to expose the brick below. Unfortunately, this process isn't as simple as it sounds, and these covered bricks are found in various conditions, and frequently the time-intensive process of removing the asphalt can further damage the brick pavers below. The policy does propose a new process for the city, which provides a path for neighbors to express which covered streets they have desire for restoration to expose brick. Without this process being formalized through the policy, property owners and neighbors are left to reaching out to the engineer of the day and their request to expose a brick street and hoping that it falls in the right timeline of the city budget or capital improvement plan. With this policy, neighbors can review the brick street's existing condition map and choose which streets they would like to express desire for restoration through an adopted neighborhood plan. Neighborhood plans get incorporated into Plan 2040, and it should be noted that not all streets are appropriate to be constructed as exposed brick, such as arterials, collectors, and bikeways. That wraps up my policy highlights, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Ultimately, we're looking for you to review and provide feedback on the brick streets and sidewalks policy ahead of taking it to the city manager for approval. Both the Historic Resources Commission and Multimodal Transportation Commission recommended approval of the policy when I brought it to them last month, each with their own recommended conditional changes. Their recommendations were provided as memos in the agenda packet. And staff's recommendation is to consider the policy as it was written by the staff working group and steering committee and included in your packet, as that is the policy I can assure meets the commitments made within the policy development process. Again, thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Cece?
Cece, I had a quick question. On page 53 of the packet, when you were discussing the primary and secondary preservation status for the brick streets, I want to make sure in discussions, whether it was focus groups, public hearings, whatnot, that as far as if it's a secondary or if there is a street within a designated area that where it's secondary and it might behoove them to do cement, concrete, and they're wanting to go with brick, that will come to us or that will come to the commission as a CIP request and not necessarily.
Yes.
I guess what would be the mode of it coming to us, and that it was emphasized, and what were the suggestions that were emphasized during those conversations? Sorry about that.
Yes, so any sort of major road reconstruction or repair would go before you all within the capital improvement project. As far as the secondary preservation streets, the policy states that those should be kept in brick. There was a strong feedback from the public to keep that tradition within the brick streets part of the value prioritization survey. The reason for the secondary preservation is mostly covered within section 7.5 of the policy, where it talks about maintenance. Because utility cuts, capital improvement projects, and regular maintenance, there was a large amount of inconsistency from field staff on how they handled those street repairs, and whether or not it was brick that went back within the repair or it was repaired with concrete, especially considering repair that might be patched and then they come back to it 3 months later. They needed some guidance from the policy on how to handle that, and so we're just looking to add some consistency there. But ultimately, any exposed brick street, the policy says to remain as an exposed brick street.
Okay. And I think from looking at the timeline, they did not, but did the steering committee consider the recommendations of Multimodal Historic Resources Commission? Do they have anything to say about those recommendations?
So I brought the policy to both MMTC and HRC as study sessions prior to the last steering committee meeting. So July 1st and July 18th, I had study sessions with both HRC and MMTC. We talked about the policy. They gave their initial feedback. That was part of why we revised the brick sidewalk permissive map, was from that feedback from both commissions saying, let's add the original town site into that map. As far as their final recommendations and the memos that were included in the policy, no, the steering committee did not meet after those final recommendations of approval with conditions were given.
So it doesn't have a recommendation one way or the other on those two. Okay.
I was curious on the HRC one. Why was that? Was there any information why the area was left out initially in the beginning?
The area included.
Or both areas, for that matter?
Let me flip to that slide really fast. So the brick sidewalk permissive map only utilizes found boundaries identified by historic districts, local, state, or national, UC overlay districts, Oriad, and the original town site. The steering committee opted to not move lines sort of at their discretion because they really valued that objective boundary created by utilizing other found sources. So there was discussion at the steering committee level to sort of fill in those gaps, but they didn't want to start using discretion on the west or the north side of that permissive map without adding anything to the east and then feeling like there might not be balance. By utilizing only found things, they felt it was the most objective and defendable.
Okay. To follow up on that, if possible, I'd like to hear from Lynn just on, why they thought it important to go ahead and, add that recommendation.
I think they thought it was important because we do have brick streets in those areas, and they're considered significant. When staff was working on this, you have to kind of look at it holistically, and I, of course, wanted it all. And Cece said, no, you can't have it all. And so I think when the Historic Resources Commission was taking public comment, and particularly I think they had some comments from the Lawrence Preservation Alliance to include those other areas that were of the same character of those listed historic districts.
Okay. Thank you.
The staff working group did meet after the MMTC and HRC meetings, and we discussed the recommendations provided by both those bodies, and staff felt that we could support HRC's recommendation should the City Commission decide to make that change. However, we did not want to edit the policy since it had already gone through the steering committee process, and we wanted to leave it up to the commission.
Okay. And that was HRC's only, or?
Correct.
Okay. Any additional questions?
Cece, I know you guys you briefly brought up in your presentation costs as we look at a more comprehensive sidewalk improvement, I guess, timeline or strategy. I guess I'm asking a loaded question here, if you would know it, just cost-wise, percentage-wise, how much of a cost increase would this be to an area where there's a cost share and a property owner has a brick sidewalk and they're wanting to preserve the brick? How much of an increase are we looking at as far as maintaining that preservation as it would be to change it to concrete?
The staff working group spent a lot of time trying to find an exact answer for that, and it's very hard to say, considering that as is written, the policy allows every person to make a decision about what, within that brick sidewalk permissive map, what works best for them in their situation. Someone with a brick sidewalk could decide that a concrete sidewalk works best for them. So the overall cost to the ADA transition plan we'll really see as we start to implement the ADA transition plan. Okay. However, for an individual property owner, the installation standards the brick policy includes, we estimate that with those standards, AB3 base, a bit of sand, bricks on top, it's about 1.5 to 2 times the cost of the same concrete sidewalk. That's based on some of the projects that the City of Lawrence has done for brick sidewalk reconstruction in various parts of town. 9th Street is an example of where it costs 1.5 times about what our average concrete sidewalk is. So in that example, the ADA transition plan's cost partnering is material specific. And so the property owner with cost partnering isn't paying for the permits, isn't paying for the labor, is paying for the material at the end of the day. And so if a property owner has a brick sidewalk currently, they have that material. If it's in great condition, I don't know there's going to be a ton of change in what their end of the day cost is. If someone has a concrete sidewalk and they need to source that brick either through the city's stock or otherwise, costs could really change.
Cool. I had a question, make sure I understand. If there's a currently asphalt-covered brick street, and the neighborhood says we want this street returned to a brick street, I understand the policy says if they get that into a adopted plan, then the city would consider doing that as funds became available?
Correct.
Do we expect to have, and I don't think we have this in our current CIP, do we expect to have a fund of money set aside just for brick streets, or this would be comparing any street versus a reconstructed street? You see what I'm saying? Like, will we have, is the contemplation we'll have $1 million set aside every year to uncover some of these streets, or when we, I guess what I'm trying to guess, the specific question, what does as money become available mean?
So the thought process on that part of the policy was to create a process where neighbors could, through their neighborhood plan, express desire for uncovered brick streets, and then should that street be a part of a street maintenance plan or a 5-year plan, if it's in their neighborhood plan, before we go back in and do an asphalt cover again, we would have a conversation of, okay, well, what is the real price difference between a mill and overlay versus reconstructing that brick street? Are there any grants available to look at reconstructing that brick street? Where is it at? And the things of that nature. So right now, there isn't a sort of pause in the street maintenance plan process that says, what does the neighborhood want? And I'm really excited that this policy has written out to at least have that conversation. We don't, at this point, to my knowledge, have a specific funding source set aside for that sort of desired uncovering, but should this policy be adopted similar to how it is now, that might be a conversation for later.
To be clear, I wasn't suggesting that we had it. I was just wondering if that was the thought process. I mean, obviously, it would seem that that expense would be much greater than relaying some asphalt, and therefore, I think that'd have to be, I mean, I think it's fair to have the conversation. I just think it'll be a lively conversation, let's say that.
Yeah.
But I do appreciate having the process laid out.
Any additional questions for CC?
No, sir.
Not seeing any. Thank you, CC.
Thank you.
And I will open this up to public comment.
Sorry, Kurt.
Hi, this is Chris Flowers. I just want to say, when it comes to like residents having the choice between brick and concrete, if they choose like brick and it's more expensive, I think the resident should have to pay whatever extra, and I don't think it should be fair for other citizens to have to pay extra for a homeowner to get brick. Also, when it comes to this making like concrete streets back to brick, if a neighborhood chooses that, I think there should be some sort of tax, like maybe they get assessed like a $10 tax or something. Like, it just, I don't like that aspect, and that is this going to be more expensive, like to get a brick street? And then like what if the neighborhood's like, yeah, let's do it? Do you think the rest of Lawrence wants to pay extra so they can get a brick street? It just, I'm kind of against that. And here's the other thing. I don't like brick because I think it's slicker when it's wet. I don't think it's as safe as concrete. And also, same with sidewalks. Have you walked on a brick sidewalk like during the rain? I think it's a lot slicker than what a regular concrete sidewalk is. And I just wonder if brick is better than concrete, then why did we start replacing all the brick to begin with? So it just seems like, I don't know, we might be going backwards if we start going back to brick after we said, oh, this concrete's better. See if I have anything else. Oh, another question I have is, we were talking about some neighborhoods, I guess, will have the option to possibly go from concrete back to brick. Can some of these brick streets, can citizens have the right to request that they be covered and converted to like a normal street? Like, I just wonder, can the brick streets eventually be covered up if the people want it? So those are just the questions I have. Thank you.
Thomas Duggar talked to previously about the sidewalks. There's one example, about 100 yards north of the Truity Credit Union on 31st Street. The sidewalk has a pitch from the inside towards the street. One side is 8 inches to the other side, 4 feet across. You can't walk on a walker or on foot. I agree that brick should be an option that the property owner has to foot the bill because it's their property right in front of their house for the brick sidewalks. And I'm for fixing all the brick streets and brick sidewalks. You can make them smooth, flat, with not that much effort. You just have to take them apart and put them back together. There's a lot of examples off Kentucky Street where they have bad brick sidewalks and good. There's also a lot of ones on that street that have the KU bricks they bought, interlaced, beautiful. Some do a lot of KU bricks, some do a few. Yes, and in general, there's a lot of bad sidewalks, including the east side of Mass Avenue, south of between 23rd Street and 19th Street. Thank you.
Hi, David Baston. I know in the presentation they spoke of good fiscal stewardship, and I know, I mean, we're at a place where our, I mean, we seem to be running out of money anyway, and we're going to spend. I did look at how they, I guess it was an asphalt base. Concrete would be way better and last longer, but anyway, the cost to do that, it's going to be, I mean, I would say at least 2 times, if not 3 times more, just to do that, as opposed to come in and just put a concrete sidewalk down, which would last substantially longer. I'm not sure, it didn't show the process that I seen in the presentation for the streets. I don't know if asphalt-based or not either, but labor-wise it's going to be at least 3 times more, and labor's always the majority of the cost, as opposed to just the product itself that you're using. So, I mean, if we're going to be looking out for trying to save money in whatever department or whatever, we already spend a lot on streets, that's a good thing. So, but I don't want to spend that much more money for just to have the bricks, which, I mean, put it in. I mean, I understand bricks were here a long time ago, and so was the gravel road out there where Wakarusa is now, and Bob Billings and the drag strip was there. I mean, they're not putting gravel back down, so we're trying to get away from that and save as much money as we can in these places. So, thank you much.
Following on what David said about money, the one thing I took away from this, and you guys are supposed to provide feedback on this, the one thing I took away from this is even your transportation planner doesn't know what this is going to cost until the plan starts. And that's how we keep getting into money issues. That's how we keep getting in over our heads, is because we don't know how much something's going to cost until we get into it. And then we're just stuck with it, right, Craig? And that's what happens, and that's how we get stuck with these bills. So the one bit of feedback that you need to provide for the taxpayers who've been insulted by the actions of this board and this city commission in the last few weeks, you need to ask them to find out exactly how much the damn thing's going to cost and bring a number to you. They need to know how much it's going to cost per yard or per block. They can break it down however they want. But they need to figure out how much it's going to cost between doing brick versus doing concrete. It's engineering. It's what they do. It's what they're supposed to do anyway. But in our city, we just go headfirst into a plan that we don't know how much it's going to cost, and we just trust that these people aren't wasting our money. And that's not been working. I can tell you as a tax-paying citizen and a tax-paying homeowner in this town that your taxes are driving people away. Driving people away, and you don't know how much your improvement plans are going to cost, that's weak. Incredibly weak that your people can't figure out a per foot, per yard, per 10 feet cost difference, brick to concrete, even estimates. They couldn't bring numbers to you guys. More thought needs to go into this stuff before it comes to you to approve to spend our money.
Hi, my name's Ed Adlot. I'm going to try to put this as easy as I can because, anyway, the brick streets should, in the consideration of it, the long-term, the longevity of how long these brick streets will outlast the asphalt streets. 2 years ago, I believe they repaved 23rd Avenue from the bridge back over here by Haskell all the way out to 19th, or not 19th, I'm sorry, Louisiana, like I said, and it's already kind of cracked. There's stuff that's that's sunk. There's trenches that's already sunk that they were supposedly repaired. With the bricks, with the streets that are going to be redone that are in brick right now, the process for them to be done will be, the city has come, or the Public Works has come up with a new plan or a revised plan to make sure that the integrity of the soil will be stabilized before they start putting these bricks. And that also will apply to the sidewalks. So the concrete will actually, on the sidewalks, they'll both maybe last about the same. As far as safety, walking on them during the ice or during the snow, I don't see that can be anything done about that. But the stuff that's in the road, the streets, these brick streets, even though they may be a little bit more to reconstruct right now, in the long run, they will last longer. Thank you.
evening, Commissioners. I brought my briefcase tonight. My name's KT Walsh, and this is 25 years of notes from meetings about brick streets. So I am so happy. This is a great, joyful evening for me. It has never reached this level. We've gotten to the HRC. We've never gotten to City Commission. So this is awesome. So I just wanted to thank CC, the staff, the steering committee, the Preservation Alliance, all the citizens and staff that worked on this. I feel like we're almost there. And I'm very pleased that the Historic Resources Commission and the Multimodal Transportation Commission listened to the public comments and read the letters, and their comments are reflected. I'm sorry, I'm going to take this off because it's giving me feedback. So next steps. The people talking about taxes and the fact that we don't have a lot of money right now, that's true. And yes, the labor would be more costly for bricks. We went out and talked to the head of Peasley Tech, and he's interested not just in training people how to do brick sidewalks and streets, he would like a full masonry program. And he asked me to contact all the unions, and I dropped the ball. I think I'm gonna throw the ball back in his court. We need Holton, a town north of Topeka, every summer hires high school students. They do 1 block of brick streets every summer. And then those kids have those skills, they can go out and get money doing people's sidewalks. I feel like there's a lot of communities doing youth preservation projects around brick streets and sidewalks, and I think we could bring that to Lawrence, especially on the East Coast. I would also ask that, should you adopt this policy, that MSO send out an email to all the contractors and utilities companies just saying, hey, new policy, here are the designated areas. Please be so careful, especially about pulling things up and taking them to the Wakarusa site, the city site where they store them. When they did East 9th Street, they just had front loaders and they dumped them in trucks, and we lost a lot of bricks that way. We also need to work on incentivizing homeowners and property owners to preserve their brick sidewalks. We have to figure out ways, and I don't know how this will work, we need to do research, to help people value that history. Let's see. Oh, I would also bring up that in the new policy, you talked about an adopted neighborhood plan would designate which streets the neighborhood would prioritize.
Time.
KT, that's time.
Okay.
Yeah,
Can I
thank
just say our neighborhood plan has stalled out for 2 years?
That's
and
time.
We needed adopted.
That's time, KT.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Barry Shalinsky, 66044, President of East Lawrence Neighborhood Association, and I will continue what KT started, which is that there's a map that talks about which streets are prioritized for brick. I think there should be an asterisk on that map that says, subject to change pending approval of neighborhood plans. We have neighborhood plans all over Lawrence. Most of them are at least 20 years old, in need of updating. Ours is in the process. And so this should be a living document where the process that CC was describing is essentially implemented on the map that's in there. In response to some of the comments today, we have brick infrastructure in this city that has been in place for 140 years, much of it in pretty decent condition. I've got a concrete sidewalk outside of my house that was replaced in the concrete upgrade process. And the neighbor to the west of mine where that was done, it's already not exactly in the best shape. So concrete really is not as durable as brick if brick is done properly. And so when we're looking at cost, we should look at the long-term value that we're getting for what we're paying. That's as to streets as well as sidewalks. I'm going to give you back half a minute. Thank you.
Okay, Sherry, any on Zoom?
Just 1 minute. It's moved over. Julie Jones.
Hi, Julie Jones, 66047 on the west side. I think it's great with the brick streets. They have them in my hometown, and they've been there for 100 years here in Kansas. I don't care what they do, as long as the homeowners are paying for the sidewalk replacement like we had to over on the west side. And I don't care if they change out their street, just as long as we, the citizens all over town, are not taxed for it. I think it's great. If people want to have a brick street in front of their house, that's great. I just don't want to pay for it. That's all I got. Thank you.
That's all the comments, Mayor.
Okay. Bringing it back to us.
Cece has a question for you to Mr. Schlinsky's comments. If there was an adopted neighborhood plan that was different than the current policy, I assume this policy would change, or is that a?
Correct. The brick sidewalk existing condition map is where the exposed brick streets and the asphalt overlaid brick streets are. And I would imagine as a means of just good housekeeping, it would be pertinent for city staff and the public to likely include, I know there's a lot of colors on that map, but another color to indicate adopted neighborhood desire for asphalt-covered brick restoration.
And this is obviously a administrative policy, so it wouldn't, I mean, if someone wanted to change that, it'd just be adopted by staff.
Correct.
Consistent with a plan that was adopted by the city commission.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I believe somebody asked as well that if somebody had a brick sidewalk and they wanted to go back with concrete, there is that option for them as well, right?
They are permitted to do so.
Okay.
Can I ask a question to Cece about existing streets that might have asphalt overlay, questionable or unknown condition bricks, but below, if the PCI is already poor, and we choose to forego repair of that surface because the adjacent landowners want to go in with brick, we're going to continuously push that project down the list until funds are available that match the need for brick, or are we going to try to like earmark it and accumulate the funds to do it because it's going to be, whatever? And that's the next question, is if you could address the question about how much more a brick street might be if it's different than the item you addressed regarding sidewalks. So those are two questions. Are we currently foregoing pavement repairs on brick streets because they're brick and it's cost more? And if we do the repair, how much more do you think it's going to be for that, doing so?
So within the maintenance section of the brick policy, section 7.5, the top line is that all streets shall be maintained in a safe and orderly manner. So if the PCI score goes from 0 to 100, Dave might be able to speak more to where our goals are within that range. But if it fell to a range, an asphalt-covered brick street got so, the condition of the pavement was so poor, we are obligated to keep that street safe. And so it wouldn't continuously be pushed lower on the priority list to the detriment of the community overall. There would be considerations, and I think grants are mostly what I envision as once neighborhoods of desire were aware of the cost impacts that can have, and that's a situation where if we can seek out historic grants or things of that nature, we're absolutely going to do so. As far as real cost comparisons, I spoke with the asset management manager, and Darren Haig, who I don't think is online today. But we know that for brick sidewalks, just to complete the answer I gave to Commissioner Sellers earlier, everything is a range, and everything has a wide spread of how much things cost, especially considering the size of a project. If the Kentucky Street ADA sidewalk project, for instance, was many blocks, and so then the cost per square foot was much less than, say, the 11th Street project where there was just one big hill that sidewalk went back in on. But so sidewalk, our range per square foot for concrete is, we aim for $10 to $15 per square foot. For bricks with an AB3 base, which is what the policy says, it's $15 to $30 per square foot. That's in line with our estimation of 1.5 to 2 times the cost. And then for streets, really wish Sharon was on. One block of brick restoration, when utilizing the information we have from the 900 block of New York project about 10 years ago, is $250 per square yard, whereas one block of asphalt covering, so that would be just relaying the asphalt, is about $19.50 per square yard. That cost is significant up front, but the lifetime, the 100-year lifetime of the material, as Darren's asset management plan calls it out, recognizes that brick streets have much less annual or 10-year cycles of whether it's mill and overlay or patching or things of that nature.
Awesome, thank you.
Cece, I have another quick question. During some of the public comment and community engagement around, I'm looking at the priority list. I found it and I lost it.
Do you want me to try and pull it up my presentation again?
I found it. I actually have 2 of your presentations open right now because I'm looking at the admin piece and then your slides. So looking at the priorities, I'm seeing where cost is kind of sitting in the middle. During any of those conversations, as it relates to costs, were there discussions around utilizing kind of like a business improvement district model, or kind of like a special improvement, something like an SIDC, all of those different improvement district models that could be utilized? Did any of that come up or float up in conversations, and how was it received by the community?
So that was a topic of conversation within the staff working group, sort of thinking through implementation. And the steering committee ultimately chose to take a step back from that conversation and yield that for the city commission. Okay. They felt that it wasn't within their expertise, nor was it within the scope that the MMTC board had asked them to write a policy about. Right. And I think as Commissioner Finkeldine mentioned, the administrative policy nature of this brick streets and sidewalks policy allows us to have some flexibility where, if need be, years down the line, we need to address some things or otherwise have those conversations, we can.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'll jump in and say, appreciate the work. I appreciate, and maybe it's because I'm leading the Land Development Code Steering Committee, but I appreciate the steering committee and the nature of that collaborative effort of bringing different folks with different expertise together, in addition with, of course, talking with the community and affected stakeholders. So I appreciate the process. And obviously getting MMTC's and HOC's input on that. So overall, I think it's a good policy. I think we've, as KT said, we've been waiting for one for a long time, and so having that on the books and having a process for consideration, knowing ultimately the cost of any such project, absent a sidewalk, which a resident can make their own decision on, will come back and rest with us. But at least to have a process to have that discussion is a good process to have. And so I appreciate the policy and appreciate the efforts. I guess I'm not a big fan of multimodal's recommendation of allowing brick sidewalks anywhere at a neighbor's request. Seems like that would just be kind of strange to do. But I am okay, I guess, with the HOC's expansion. I would have been interested in the steering committee's response to that, but understand the timing of it. And so if staff supports that, I'm okay with that expansion that the HOC recommended.
Yeah, I would second it. I know, as KT said, it's been a long time in the works. So I think this is a great first step in, policy to go ahead and get us going forward. And it sounds like, to the answer, Barry, as well, that it might be more of a, moving document as well that, has the ability to go ahead and be what we need it to be. So, but yeah, I'm not as interested in multimodal's recommendation. I would lean towards the Historic Resources Commission recommendation. That makes a little bit more sense to me. So,
yeah, I would support the plan. I think that it's a great start. I can tell you that one of the first things that the East Lawrence neighborhood talked to me about back in 2015 was brick streets and the need for policy. So here it is 9 years later, and we've actually got one in front of us. It's here, and I think it's, like I said, a good way to start this. I do appreciate the HRC's recommendation, and I could be fine with that. Not so much interested in the other one, though.
Yeah, agreed. I think I echo everybody else's comments and the opportunities that you introduce for failures of the pavement when you have two dissimilar materials being thrown together haphazardly. It's just going to invite more chances for more problems. So I feel like that might introduce more error into the equation. So I'm looking more towards not including those recommendations.
Cece, first off, thank you for your presentation. I was quite delighted by its content, the structure of it, how you introduced different aspects of the strategic plan as it relates to the outcomes and the commitments. I think you set the bar very high by keeping those little tabs in it. This might become the template for outcome and commitment updates. So outcome and commitment champions, you've heard my words. So, but yes, overall, I think it added a necessary piece to your presentation, which allowed for it to flow very well. So I was very happy with that. So I wanted to give you your flowers for that. I do echo some of the sentiments of my fellow commissioners in regards to the recommendations, specifically from MMTC in regards to the sidewalks. I know that it's been an ongoing debate between different neighborhoods as far as if there was a priority, would it be sidewalks or streets? Introducing the cost component and knowing kind of some of the state statutory requirements around sidewalks. You know, my mind leads to that's, a problem that is looking for a solution that may not administratively or even in the basis of this policy make everything whole. I think it's gonna create some neighborhood infighting as far as, where a neighborhood or as an aggregate, folks would want to maintain the characteristic of the brick sidewalk, but from a cost perspective of a property owner and other attributes, they may not want to. So, but I recognize and acknowledge that process, but I do say that's one that I don't really truly support. I do have a hard time stomaching it. As it relates to other comments around just the cost and improvement and CIP and everything, this just takes us back to the asset management piece. And as we begin to further implement that we will have those costs assumptions that'll come to it. This is something where, again, with the sidewalks, that's a shared revenue. When it comes to the streets, that'll be another aspect. But then we put those pieces in place in a policy, which is where they need to be in order for us as a governing body, not necessarily this governing body, but whichever governing body, to be able to make those decisions. So I do appreciate you going through that and touching on that during this presentation. Other than that, we talked about there's aspects of improvement districts, and I think that's a conversation that as commissioners will need to come up as neighborhoods, figure out their plans, and if we're looking at, scale projects where 80% or something about 50% of currently exposed brick sidewalks or streets are wanting to be preserved, and how do we ensure the equitability of cost sharing of that as sound fiscal stewards. So just want to make sure that we kind of keep that in the back of our mind as these things start to matriculate. And then lastly, I don't know, KT, we may have to throw the ball back to you on this, on the masonry apprenticeship program. I think if Kevin wanted you guys to take a look at it, we definitely need to. I appreciate what Kevin brings to the table and how there's opportunities where economic development and some of its, I don't want to say unusual ways, but as it relates to labor and how we're trying to get back to labor, and how this is a wonderful opportunity for an institution like Peasley Tech to be able to get involved in a masonry program. I know the closest one we talked about was that I think KT was referencing to is in Atchison, and that's a tech college, but we do have that opportunity through apprenticeships. And so if that's something that Kevin thinks that he can mustered up and get going, because there is money out there available to establish apprenticeship programs, and we do need to get the labor groups involved in that, then I definitely think we should go after it. That's co-governance. That's a way to create collaboration in order to better the lives of everyone in our community. So I do love the aspect of bringing that up and what that could mean for our community, especially for our neighborhoods that want to preserve this aspect of history in our community. So great presentation. Thank you, and look forward to seeing this in implementation.
Thank you.
I just want to add one thing. Excuse me. I wanted to thank Ed, who came up during public comment and initially brought up how brick streets last longer than just regular concrete or asphalt. And I do appreciate that, because I had forgotten about that point from a long time ago, and then you discussed it more. So that's information that we'll use when we're determining what's the most cost-effective way to do this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think I would ask the commission if, does anybody need a break? We've been going at it for a little bit before we continue.
I'm good.
What, 10 minutes?
No, I'm saying.
Oh, okay, we're good. You want to go? Okay. All right. You want to go? Okay.
Momentum.
All right. I'll let everybody go ahead and leave as well. Okay. Item F, commission items. Any commission items from anybody?
I did have one, and then I just deleted it. So, Department of Commerce hosted their Women in Minority Business Week and had their celebration. I was looking it up. Celebration 2 weeks ago, I do believe. And we had 3 local businesses that were nominated in several different categories, and 2 were actual winners. And so, as I make a long pause to get to that page, so it was the Minority Enterprise and Development Awards that were held in Hugoton, and the 3 businesses that were celebrated on September 6th include, and winners, Brianna Bell from Curlology, and then I do believe the other one was her sister. Which I don't know where it's, can't find it now. And then the other nominee for entrepreneur, so Brianna Bell for Curology for Family Business Excellent Award. She was the winner in that category. In the category of Community Arts Engagement Award, Catherine Bell with So Simple Sewing. And she actually won in that category. And then lastly, Entrepreneur of the Year, which was a huge category and a very tough category. Kristen Eldridge with Snap Promotions was a nominee. Unfortunately, she did not win. Did you put my page up? Okay. Great. Kristen Eldridge was a nominee, but unfortunately did not win in that category. But just huge shout out to the Department of Commerce for recognizing some of our local entrepreneur talent and many success for those who traveled out to Hugoton for the event.
That's awesome.
Okay. Any additional commission items? Did you have an additional one, Commissioner Sellers?
No, I was going to ask Sherry that about the one we had for boards and commissions, but I didn't know if that was, did we need to address that during commission items, or did we miss time to address that if need be?
You mean in response to the written public comment that was
Yes.
given?
Yes.
If you all wanted to address that now, you could definitely do that right now.
I don't necessarily want to unless there is someone that the person who brought it to the attention wanted to. But I will state, I do believe it was in regards to one of our appointees to the Affordable Housing Advisory Board. It was Dr. Hahn, and I know that was shared with us. And I just wanted to state that I did support, I was one, because apparently there was an asterisk by her name, so that was more than one commissioner that supported nominating Dr. Hahn to the Affordable Housing Advisory Board. I became familiar with Dr. Hahn's bio after researching her. She did serve briefly on AHAB. I do believe she took the remaining time of Edith Guffey's at-large seat. And in reviewing Dr. Hahn's vitae and conversing with her, I had no problem supporting her nomination simply because of her very specific expertise in housing and housing policy. The amount of research that she has done, the fact that she is a current professor at the university in Lawrence. I do recognize that while she does not live in Lawrence, she lives in Overland Park, she is employed by our largest employer and does teach here in Lawrence, and we've made We've made exceptions for individuals on boards and commissions based on where they worked to that capacity. But I think if you cross-tab not only Dr. Hahn's enthusiasm on the project, the fact that she's committed to being on the commission, as well as her expertise, I don't know, I don't see any fault in not allowing her to continue to stay on the board unless someone truly believes there's some gross negligence in allowing that to happen. But I fully support her being serving on AHAB and think that her expertise and her ability to speak to this and be just to be a strong proponent for that board gives me reason to have her maintain that and allow for the exception, seeing that she is an employer of the University of Kansas.
Can we please keep any conversations quiet out there, please? Thank you. Any follow-up or discussion around that?
No, thank you.
Okay. Okay. And no additional commission items?
Sir.
All right. Sherry, do you need anything from us?
No.
Okay. All right. Item G, Senior Manager's Report.
Thanks, Mayor. There are 3 items in the report. One is celebration of a peak performance award that both of our wastewater treatment plants received. This is not something that is easily achieved, and so we wanted to recognize them in getting that milestone met. And then it's the utility billing report and future agenda items.
Okay. Any questions regarding the City Manager's Report? I did have one question regarding the future agenda items. I know that there was a November 5th and 12th date. I think we have another Tuesday in there, right? Like November 19th?
We do.
Okay.
Let me see. I think we just didn't have any regular agenda items
Okay.
on that yet. But I'll look and get that updated for the
Okay.
first meeting in October. We should have some things coming in by then.
Okay. All right. Just one.
We usually just put like the work session or regular agenda items on there. And
All
I
right.
think we had a strategic plan presentation, but that got moved. But I'll make sure that that date gets updated for the next meeting.
Okay. Any additional questions?
No, sir.
All right. It's a public comment item, open for public comment on the City Manager's Report.
Good evening, Commissioner. How you doing, Mayor? My name is Isaiah Lanier. I'm a resident of Lawrence, been here about 13 years. I had some concerns with the utility company, the water company. For the last 2 months that I have record of right now, we've been charged in excess of $1,700 for a water bill. We called to speak to someone about the matter and was getting very like passive-aggressive attitudes about it. We were told to find someone to find someone to come to our residence and do an inspection to see if we had any leaks. We contacted 3 different contractors, 2 came out twice and didn't find anything. We called them back to give them that information. They told us that they couldn't do nothing for us until we gave them a receipt to show that we had done some repairs at our property. They won't come out and look at the meter to make sure that's not faulty. We was actually told that. And again, we paid since August 22nd up to this date over $1,700 in the water bill. It's very strenuous right now, as we all know, with economic times, and it's a bit frustrating when you call and try to get some help about it or to see if they can assist us with the matter, because it's obvious not a problem with our home that we get these type of attitudes and remarks. And I appreciate y'all hearing me. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll speak to the rest of that during public comment, but I want to speak to your future agenda items and your mayoral election coming up, because your mayor up here that's sitting there right now has got you in some trouble. And that's the result of some bad processes here in determining who's going to run these meetings. We need a stronger mayor, because we don't have a strong mayor. And I'll go into more of that during public comment as well. But when you guys think about who's going to run these meetings, you need to think about who's going to be able to be fair and reasonable up there, instead of somebody that works with their feelings and lays plans ahead of time to get things done that they know are illegal. So when it comes time to decide who's going to be the mayor up there, I want you to think about which one of you is going to be the least likely to get fucking sued. And it's definitely not the guy sitting in the middle right now.
Didn't plan on speaking on this, but the gentleman that came up and talked about his water bill being $1,700 over, and then the city maybe not going to work with him on this. And I know for a fact that the city has taken care of $8,000 off of one person's bill this year. And I do have records of that if anybody needs it. I just want to say that in public. So I think it'd be wise if you would help that gentleman with his bill, please.
Sherry, any public comment on Zoom?
No, Mayor.
Okay, bringing it back to us. Commission calendar, item H.
Nope.
Anything?
No, sir.
All right. I will take a pause to go ahead and let anybody leave the room that wants to leave the room before open public comment. Then I'll read the statement beforehand.